So we can't hear the video.
Professor, we cannot hear the video.
I'm sorry, you mean you couldn't see that while I was showing it to you?
No, we
You could
couldn't
see
hear
it,
it.
but couldn't hear it.
Can you hear it now?
No.
Oh, yeah, something happened with the audio on the computer. I was listening to a Zoom, I was at a Zoom meeting before we started class. So I'll have to fix this, but well, you don't need any more of it, I guess. You can watch that on your own. It's really interesting. It's too bad it didn't work. Well, anyway, so, okay, well, I mean, you can see me right now. I'm using this this headphone set because there were some problems with the audio, and I can see one of the benefits of the old system I was using, because I could show you YouTube things and you can hear it through this microphone, but evidently there's some problems. So I have to restart the computer, but I don't want to waste time restarting the computer since this is our short class. Okay, so let's now go back to, again, just showing you in this video the prevailing American view in Washington that the Soviet Union was a Russian version of Nazi Germany. And so that's why I'm here today in 2021 in your classroom, and this classroom's in English, because the Americans fought the Korean War to contain the supposed Russian version of Nazi Germany. And there was an entire vast national security establishment created to carry out and implement containment. And those interests collectively view themselves as having won the Cold War and saved the world, and you and me, from totalitarianism in the form of the Russian version of Nazi Germany. And now, of course, Russia is a mere fragment of figment of what it used to be, a shadow of what it used to be. Its entire economy is about the size of South Korea's economy or Italy's economy. But now we have the People's Republic of China under the Communist Party of China. And of course, this is now being talked about a lot among all of these vast vested interests in the United States as a source of challenge to the United States. And let me make sure that we have enough time for our debate, because you wrote paragraphs on this. So let me go back to the debate statement. So here we have the debate question. To South Koreans, the US foreign policy bureaucracy collectively pushed the US to a new Cold War with China. And before we do that, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the notes. Well, let's go ahead and go directly to it, because I want to make sure that you're all excited and mobilized. So let me divide you into groups according to what your paragraphs. And so we stop share, go to breakout rooms. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4. That means make you into 4 groups and assign manually. And room 1 will be Pro 1. And that will include Alisa and Idohi. And the next group will be, oh, sorry, I have to rename. One, yes. And rename Pro 2. And that will be Moose and Kim J1. And where's Kim J1? There we go. And room 3 will be Con 1.
Sorry, I was also Pro, and you didn't mention my name.
Okay, so let me put you here with assign Timen. Okay, all right, and
Thank you.
Okay, and Con 1, we will put, we will assign Gilles and Nikita. Oh no, Kenton. King, Kimuji. And then in Con 4, in room 2, Con 2, we will put those remaining. And that will be these 3. Okay, so please go to your enter your rooms and let me see who's going to speak first for each group. Heads will be the first person in each group. And it's heads. So Elisa and Ais will speak first for pro. Gilles and Kang Tongmin will speak first for con. And I will write the statement as well. And so heads, I will be pro, tails con. And it's heads, so I am pro. So I'll write a pro statement. Yeah, again, one of the reasons, again, as I said earlier, I like doing these exercises because if I have to articulate what's floating around in my brain by teaching, I come to some new realization. So I just came to a new realization right now. Wow, this is really depressing. Oh, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. This is great. Wow. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, so let me close the breakout rooms. Okay, so we will now have, who's going to speak first for pro? And the first to speak for pro heads is Elisa, and it's tails. So Anais Bus, why do you think that the Cold War establishment bureaucracy in the United States is going to push the US into a new Cold War with China?
Yes, so we spoke about that, the fact that there's a lot of competition in the bureaucracy, and that with Donald Trump, the bureaucracy started to isolate China in the trade. And now because the bureaucracy stays the same, like they are still trying to isolate China. And as it will go on, China will react. So it could lead to a Cold War.
Yeah, so there will be a conflict spiral led up to the First World War, right? Where each country's defense ultimately, primarily, not only, but primarily defensively motivated. The Habsburgs, the Germans, the French, the Russians, the British, but they saw the other side as aggressively, imperialistically, opportunistically motivated. So they mobilized to show that they have the will and the determination to defend themselves. And then after the killing of the Archduke in August 1914, led to escalation and acceleration of the development trends and mobilization that led to panic. I mean, when you look at the behavior of Kaiser Wilhelm and the Russian emperor and how they were speaking, they were panicking as August proceeded, and they believed that, well, war is inevitable. The first country to strike first will win. So we have to strike first because if we don't, we'll lose. So war's coming, let's go. And so they made it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So maybe I made that argument about the Cold War also being a spiral conflict, a conflict spiral where, you know, actors are reacting to each other's actions, misperceiving their belligerents as offensively motivated by perception of opportunity to perceive degeneracy. And you're trying to demonstrate that you're not degenerate, that you got the guts to resist them, and you'll fight them if you have to. So you end up fighting them. Yeah, I can see that. Although, you know, it's interesting how Xi Jinping makes statements, like he just made a statement today or yesterday about how they will, you know, they will not rule out using military force to reunify with Taiwan, but they want to reunify peacefully. And okay, yeah, okay, and I can see, you know, people are talking about the partition of the world into different economic blocks as Taiwan, you know, as China tries to maintain economic trade hegemony with countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, and Asian countries, while the U.S. will attempt to decouple from the Chinese, while, you know, solidifying U.S. hegemony in its bloc. Although, of course, with Donald Trump withdrawing the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that made that move problematic. But, you know, of course, now China's applied to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership last week. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you make that statement. That's an interesting statement. And so let's go now to the, and again, I mean, the argument is that all of these political, economic, trade regimes created since 1945 promoted prosperity and development in Korea, Japan, Europe, and they were part of containment. I mean, there weren't containment of the Soviet Union, the perceived Russian version of Nazi Germany, wasn't the only was not the only motivation, but it was a primary motivation for the United States to devote the resources to making the international capitalist trading system work. So, and those are considered to be what the Biden administration is calling the international rules-based order, that basically it's the order the United States runs. And China is portrayed as a perceived threat to that. And it's interesting how the Chinese, they don't react as belligerently to Biden and administration statements as I might expect they would react. Like, they won't take the provocation. They won't respond. I mean, they could respond much more provocatively than they are, and they're not. Although they do send planes, war planes close to Taiwan, but not over Taiwan. sometimes I think, you know, the Chinese, they've studied the theories that I've been working with. And let's go now to Khan, and Khan will make its first statement. So heads, it's Khan 1, and it's heads. So Gilles, what did your group come up with? That basically you're arguing against the U.S. foreign policy bureaucracy pushing the world towards a new Cold War. Why, Gilles?
I think there was a little mistake because my teammate was actually pro Cold War, so we had a little discussion. So while I was con, I believe that even though that there are many foreign policy bureaucracy, I think they all, even though they do not cooperate in the best of terms all the time, I believe they have a common goal of ensuring that the U.S. Stays and maintains its hegemony, whilst also making sure that they do not lose face to the rest of the world, especially in the U.S.-China crisis right now.
So do you think the European Union will attempt to mitigate or a balance between China and U.S. to try to prevent the unification of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, U.S. and Europe in a containment strategy against China?
I think Europe is going to, like Europe always does, is going to wait it out. That's what they're known for. They're going to be take on a very passive stance, in my opinion. Because with the current leadership, it's the only thing I can see from happening. I think they'll be still closer to the United States because of the history they share together. But the possibilities that China offers currently for economic development and resources and materials that come from China, I think they'll have to make a calculated decision on what kind of stance they want to hold towards those two superpowers.
So you think that the European Union, the Europeans will not, despite what Lithuania is doing and allowing the Taipei government in Taiwan to call itself Taiwan and Lithuania, officially call itself Taiwan in Lithuania.
I think if it was a European Parliament decision that the whole European Union was going to call Taiwan an independent country separated from China, I think the whole European Union would have done it already, because that's one of the things they stand together. But if it's only one country,
well, Lithuania is paying some economic price for its moves. Now,
yeah.
It's not a big price, and it's a small country. But I mean, if I could find, I have the article here somewhere about how Lithuania is paying a price. I don't know if I can really find it right now. Maybe it's in another class. But the Chinese are stopping the supply to Lithuanian businesses of components of economic products and resources that the Chinese typically supply to Lithuanian businesses. Like, I think I'd have to find it. I think I have it in the European Union class I'm teaching in that file. But the Chinese were providing glass to certain Lithuanian manufacturers, and so now the Chinese are saying, "Oh, we're having problems. We can't supply you. We have supply disruptions, Lithuania. Sorry." So they are starting to punish Lithuanian businesses for Lithuania's government's willingness to allow Taiwan delegations to call themselves Taiwan delegations in Lithuania.
Isn't it better to actually ease into it? Because if you do it at one point, I think the chances of having a Cold War is even bigger. And if you do it slowly, they will slowly adjust to the fact that Taiwan will be called a sovereign nation. But if you do it in one time, I think as the entire European Union, there will be a much higher chance that China immediately goes into it and says, let's start another world war.
Yeah. Okay. So who has a response to Timen? Someone, Timen has stated that if you do it slowly, if one small European country after another does it, that the Chinese will acquiesce. and voila, eventually the big countries in Europe will recognize Taiwan as Taiwan, and the Chinese will acquiesce to that. Anybody have a response? I have my response, but I want to hear your response.
I think I want to say that I agree with the statement Timon gives. I think the way it goes right now, I think European Union is both fearful and is enthusiastic about what China is becoming today. It's fearful because China is buying strategic positions in Europe. For example, in Belgium, they've already bought one of the biggest cargo airports in Belgium, and they are currently exploiting that to make it grow. Before they came in, it was not that big, but now it's really starting to become big, as well as they have tried multiple times to buy energy producing facilities in Belgium. So, and that is a very concerning thing for the European Union as well as the Belgian government, as they don't want to be dependent on China for their power. Because what if we, for example, say something that China doesn't like, for example, the Lithuania situation, and they own power supply in Lithuania, then you're, pardon my French, but then you're fucked.
Yeah, I guess it's a question about Chinese nationalism. I mean, the extent to which you think the Chinese would acquiesce in terms of the political regime that's founded. The Chinese authoritarian one-party state regime is founded upon anti-colonialism and anti-imperialist partition of China. That they believe themselves as having been humiliated. That China was at one time much larger than it is now. That Mongolia, for example, was part of China until the Russians intervened, for example, in the 1920s to separate Mongolia and lose all that territory. That other territory, I mean, I'm not saying that they're correct, but this worldview they have that they've been, for the last 200 years, that they've been abused and partitioned, only thanks to the Communist Party's one-party authoritarian dictatorship were they able to overcome the de facto partition of China from a British sphere of influence in area in what is China, a French sphere of influence, a German sphere of influence, not to mention a Japanese domination. And they overcame that so that China was not partitioned, but it did lose territory. And that last piece of territory is Taiwan. Well, not last, but one significant piece of territory is Taiwan. And the only reason why Taiwan is separate is because the Americans in the escalating Cold War in the late 1940s, they sent the American Navy to protect that regime, to prevent the communists from invading Taiwan and finishing the Kuomintang under Chiang Kai-shek, who fled to Taiwan after he lost on the mainland. He fled to Taiwan. They're only 150 kilometers away from the border with the mainland, and the American government sent the American Navy to stop the communists from knocking off the Chiang Kai-shek's regime in Taiwan after it fled. So again, and this point isn't emphasized enough in the media reports. But the only reason why Taiwan is de facto independent is because the American Navy did that in the late 1940s. And the escalating Cold War, and the belief that all communism was directed from Moscow, from Stalin. And so, do you think that the Chinese nature of the Chinese state will accept de facto Taiwan becoming the Republic of Taiwan? And I can imagine scenarios, but they're very long term. I would think, not under this one-party authoritarian totalitarian state that exists there now. I could imagine if there's some kind of revolution in China, and there's a democratizing revolution in China, that they would acquiesce to it. But of course, that's the justification for the authoritarian one-party totalitarian state to rule in China, that it's still on this mission to prevent splitists from separating more of the Chinese nation state from China, like they want Tibet, like they want Xinjiang province. These are all aiming to divide and weaken China even further, and to be under the conspiratorial exploitation by the Americans or the British and their allies in the areas and their clients in Asia and elsewhere. So And of course, if you're a cold warrior in the United States, you say, yeah, that's the nature of that one-party state. That one-party state, like we talked about in the foreign policy class, right, where we talked about the nature of regime, you know, we talked about. I mean, we talked about control regime, right? We talked about the different control regimes in the class. So let me go back to sharing the screen. I just talked about this in the other class as well, where, you know, you have a system in which the Americans believe that the Soviet Union was a Russian version of Nazi Germany, right? And that that control system in Nazi Germany was one in which this was the control system in Nazi Germany. We talked about this, I think, right? That this normative active control refers to the need of this kind of regime to provide glory and imperial glory and conquest for the nation. And that's how Hitler justified staying in power. That it's not easy being a citizen of Germany, but under the Nazis, Germany is becoming the world hegemon. And we're paying a price, but the benefits are a world dominated by Germany, providing glory and honor and imperial conquest to Germany. Of course, it's a cruel regime. And there's a large minority of the regime in Germany. They hated that regime. And again, this is all being used by this foreign policy bureaucracy in the United States to describe not all the elements, but a lot of them in the United States are being used to describe the People's Republic of China today. That under Nazi Germany, it was a coercive regime against that large minority of people that despise this brutal, this lowbrow, coarse, ridiculous caricature of patriotism, but also, you know, if you were cooperated with the regime, obeyed the rules, you had opportunities to live a better life economically. You might not like what Hitler was doing against the Jews and people and other people in Germany, but you know, at the same time, you know that next year you're going to get a car, and so you kind of like that. You're going to get an apartment. And if you have political career ambitions, you want to be a professional, influential person of society through joining some kind of organization, you can join the Nazi Party. You do have to join the Nazi Party if you want to rise high anywhere in that system. You can join the police, you can join the military, you can join the elite military, the SS. Lots of opportunities to participate and gain economics. So utilitarian economic and participatory benefits to those people who obey the rules. Normative habitual control, that's not the kind of control that applied in Germany. In Germany, it was a revolutionary regime. I mean, Hitler was revolutionizing German society to make it strong, to make Germany great again, to get rid of the perceived sources of weakness that caused Germany to lose World War I or made Germany unable to stand up to its enemies. And then, of course, this is the dominant element in the control nature of this very abstract model of the relationship of the authorities to the public to maintain control over the public, appeal to German nationalist pride. So this was the control system in Germany at the time. Authoritarian populism. And this is what Donald Trump was moving the US towards until he was removed from power. The control system in the Soviet Union was rather this, although the Americans believed that the Soviet Union was this. The Americans in the Cold War, and then that video, propaganda video I was showing you, was this, that the Soviet Union was, this is the reality, that the Soviet Union was motivated by, the Soviet authorities controlled the Soviet Union through fear and terror. It was a revolutionary regime, and it definitely utilized manipulation of symbols of Marxism, Leninism to appeal to the people to support it, but that's not going to be very attractive to the majority of this population that are peasants, often illiterate peasants who are losing their land and their cattle and their livestock to be forced to collectivize and collective farms. You know, Marxism, Leninism is going to appeal maybe to those ambitious careerists who want to participate and replace the old ruling elite to become the new ruling elite themselves that Stalin was executing and removing. And they would get benefits and participation benefits by joining the party, joining the secret police, and so on. But this regime is not very useful for mobilizing resources, as shown by the weakness of the regime in fighting the Germans when they invaded in 1941. I mean, the regime was ridiculously bad. The Soviet army just fell apart, even though it was much bigger than the German army. Now you expect Soviet soldiers to fight for this regime that, you know, is arresting their grandparents or parents and taking all of their land and starving them to death. No, no, thank you. And then Stalin began quickly adapted to appealing to traditional Russian notions of Russian nationalism and pride, traditional romantic, old traditional Russian ethnic symbols of the motherland, fighting Russians against the hated Germans, going back 1,000 years to Ivan Nevsky and the battle against the Teutonic Knights, et cetera, et cetera. But the Americans in 1947, 1950 believed the Soviet Union was this. It was like Nazi Germany. And you got that in that video that you weren't able to hear. So I encourage you to watch it for fun. And then this was the control system in the United States at this time, that on the eve of the Second World War. You know, Americans control themselves. They tend to, this is a legitimate regime. They obey the rules because they don't even think about the rules. They just think that the rules are right. And we just know what's right and wrong. We don't question it. It's the American system. Utilitarian, and if you obey the rules, you know, you're going to live better next year because America's the land of opportunity. You're going to get a pay increase. You're going to buy nice new things. And you're going to, as long as you obey the rules. And then coercion against those people that don't, for some reason, have a problem, who are considered deviants, and we throw them in jail or fire them. And then during times of crisis, like the Japanese bombardment of Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the American president becomes the living, breathing symbol of the United States in rallying the Americans around the so-called rally around the flag phenomenon. And George Bush 1 and 2 both exploited this in going to war in Iraq, and then in 1991, and then George W. Bush using it in 2002, 2001, 2003 against Afghanistan and Iraq. And after the 9/11 attacks. And so the belief, it would be easy for me to believe that this foreign policy bureaucracy and its self-serving Cold War descendants, the People's Republic of China is this. And that they, of course, yes, they have to take back Taiwan because they have to give glory to the Chinese people. Even though Taiwan is a vibrant democracy with freedom of expression, all those things we love here in South Korea and in Belgium and the United States. And we're going to let them fall under this brutal one-party totalitarian state that censors the internet and doesn't let people fight for their rights. You're going to really give that up and let them fall under darkness, totalitarian, communist evil? No! I mean, it would be so easy. And you always said Donald Trump and his supporters pushed the Americans in that direction. And I don't, you know, Joe Biden is still talking in ways like that. He's slowly reversing some of the tariffs, but not all that were put on China. It's really hard to walk this back because of the legacy of Trump. And as I said, Trump's probably going to run for president again in 2024, and he dominates the Republican Party. So it will be, but you know, portraying the Communist Party of China, you're going to really sacrifice liberal democratic Taiwan. That, you know, I think they just passed, you know, gay rights, gay marriage law, and all of those nice things that we consider to be so wonderful. You're going to let them become part of the People's Republic of China, like Hong Kong, where they're losing all of their freedom of expression rights. No, we can't. So, I mean, I'm going off here to show you how this could conceivably happen. And so let's go on here and go back to the next group. And yes.
So historically, they've always tried to aid Taiwan to make it independent, but why has America always said, okay, we're going to help Taiwan, but in return, we're going to trade with Beijing. We're going to make trade better with Beijing.
Well,
So
like,
they're always backtracking, kind of.
well, I mean, you know, again, there was a lot of, thank you for that question, because there was during the Cold War, the Americans de facto allied with China against the Soviet Union beginning in the 1970s, with Nixon's trip to China. And then, you know, when the Americans were defeated in Vietnam, and then I mean, the Chinese masterfully under Deng Xiaoping exploited American nationalism, American humiliation. After the Americans lost in Vietnam and in Cambodia, there was then a conflict between communist Cambodia and communist Vietnam over the conditions of the Vietnamese minority in Cambodia being persecuted by the Cambodians because they were nationalists, even though they talked in communist terms. It's all nationalism: Cambodian nationalism, Vietnamese nationalism, Chinese nationalism. So China invaded Cambodia to get rid of the Khmer Rouge, the Cambodian communist regime, in part because of their abuse of the Vietnamese minority in Cambodia. And they put in Hun Sen, who's still there today. And to punish communist Vietnam for invading and ousting its friendly allied regime in communist Cambodia, communist China attacked communist Vietnam in 1979. And they fought, and the Chinese army fought very badly. And the Soviet Union threatened to attack China if it continued to attack Vietnam. So this Cold Warrior view about a communist global empire conspiracy, all the communists are killing all the other communists right after the Americans get defeated by Vietnamese nationalism. But Americans just disregarded that. But I remember, I mean, I was in high school when China attacked Vietnam, and I showed you the video last class of Deng Xiaoping coming to Washington under Jimmy Carter in the late 1970s. This is all of this upsurge of American nationalism after the humiliations of the 1970s, the loss of the Vietnam War, the economic crisis, the Arab oil embargo. Americans seem to be unable to control their own economic destiny as the Arabs are mobilizing against Israel to put an oil embargo on the supporters of Israel after the 1973 Yom Kippur, October 1973 war. And there was this upsurge in American nationalism that was emerging even before Ronald Reagan won election in 1980. And Deng Xiaoping exploited that because he had his conflicts and China had their conflicts with Russia and Soviet Union. I mean, the Chinese and the Russians actually went to war in the late 1960s over the border in Siberia, where the estimates are that 88 Soviet soldiers died in an artillery battle and over 300 Chinese soldiers died. This is in 1968-69. So Ronald Reagan gets elected, and they reemphasized refighting the Cold War again, and China becomes the de facto ally of the United States against the Soviet Union from 1980 until the collapse of the Soviet Union. And this continues. In the midst of that building of that de facto alliance, all of this money is being invested in China and being encouraged by the American government to go into China, by all these American corporations. And only in the last few years, under Trump, has this been seriously challenged. Barack Obama was talking about a pivot to Asia, but he didn't try to stop trade. He didn't put tariffs on China the way Trump did a few years ago. But the point is, there was a lot of economic vested interest built up in having decent relations with China, which the Chinese are attempting to utilize to prevent a containment policy against China. And those people who do see China as a terrible threat are saying, these corporations, they're treasonous. They want money. They want money more than they want the security of the United States against this Chinese version of Nazi Germany. They don't use those terms, but that's in effect what they're saying. That these American corporations have to leave China, go invest in communist Vietnam, go invest anywhere, but not in China. So, even though Vietnam is communist, the Americans have excellent relations with Vietnam. I think my backpack was made in Vietnam, LL Bean brand. Let me see who else is going to speak because we're running out of time here. So let's go back to the breakout rooms. So, so Anais Moose, did you speak?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
she
did.
already.
Okay, Alisa.
So we actually agreed with Anais saying that the US is trying to isolate China a bit. Like they agreed on a deal with Australia regarding their nuclear powered submarines. And also they're holding military drills together with Japan, Australia, and India in the South China Sea. And they're even like encouraging European allies to do the same thing so that China is not really capable of taking control of that sea. So there are a lot of actions that do like threaten China, but like Timon also said that it's not only the bureaucracy, but also the president that can, like make a strain on the relationship with another country, like Trump did while he was in office.
You know,
So,
I don't. Let me point out something that is typically pointed out in the Introduction to International Relations class, and that is, I used to read in textbooks until about 10 years ago this statement that the level of economic interdependency as a percent of the economies of the of European states in 1914 was about the same as it is among the global economies in 1914 is about the same as it is today. So all of those deep economic interdependencies between the Americans and the British and the Germans and the French and the Austrians and Italians, it was significant in 1914. All of these deep economic interdependencies, trade relationships, financial obligations, and that did not prevent World War I from happening. That did not prevent World War I from happening. So you might say, well, it's impossible. The world economy is so interdependent with the Chinese and the Americans and the Europeans. But accidents happen, crises happen, escalations happen through, for example, when the American, what was it? I talked about this already a few years ago when a mistaken announcement alarm was sent out to the people of Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, where Pearl Harbor is located, that there was an incoming missile, protect yourself, go into defense, send it to everybody's SMS on their smartphone. It was an accident. Now, fortunately, the US Navy base in Hawaii got this SMS and they said, hey, what's going on? Let's check. Is there a missile coming in? Anybody check. There's no missile coming in. But what if one person somewhere had said, oh my God, there's a missile coming into Hawaii. The North Koreans are attacking. And somebody had responded with violence. We might not be here right now in this class speaking to each other. And those kinds of accidents happen regularly because they involve hundreds of thousands of human beings, each having some degree of autonomy in making decisions, particularly in a crisis environment. So, like, even though the world economy is interdependent, I can still imagine scenarios where, where something happens, somebody gets and there's a response and there's an escalation and then sanctions are put on countries which escalate further. And but these are definitely difficult. I mean, they didn't happen during the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. But of course, the Americans are not economically interdependent with the Soviet Union because, of course, now we have nuclear weapons. So everybody knows what I'm talking about. If these accidents happen, we all die if these things escalate out of control. But still, tragedies can happen. And short of, disasters short of, I mean, that's the concern with North Korea, right? That North Korea is unstable, that North Korea, things can happen as North Korean generals and politicians can compete with each other, utilize a crisis with South Korea to advance their own domestic interests in North Korea during a crisis, and things escalate out of control as a consequence. So, all right, so let's go on to Kang Tong-un for Khan. What is your group statement?
I think Trump made the relationship serious between US and China, but I think Biden will different. I think that the Biden administration will not push a new Cold War, but try to negotiate with China by using US soft power because they are entangled with each other economically. It means that the US remind the whole world that US is still a hegemony.
Okay. And so let's go up to Pro 1. So, or Pro 1 or Pro 2, heads is Pro 1 and it's tails. So Jaewon Kim Jaewon, what is your statement for Pro?
I wrote that. Can you hear?
Yes.
Thank you. I wrote that the conflict between United States and China indicates the growing importance of the bureaucracies of United States, and as they are in competition with each other for resources and influences, there's a dilemma of inflexibility when meeting the common interest. But I thought that this right now is the best time for them, for the American bureaucracies to cooperate each other for the same purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So,
yes.
that's it for my.
Okay. We're running short here. So heads is Con 1 and it's tails. So Chon Hyo Kyung, what is your statement?
Actually, I was a pro. I also agree with Timon and sorry, I don't remember. I think it is clear that the bureaucrats will push for the establishment of the Cold War system. Nevertheless, I think all out war will not occur because of the security and economic costs that China and US have to bear.
I mean, keep in mind, we talked about accents. Remember, General David Miley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, earlier this year got on the phone and talked to the Chinese head of the military twice to calm him down because the Chinese were concerned that Trump might attack them. Twice. He got on the phone, went around Trump, did not ask for Trump's position, and calm the Chinese military, say, we're not going to allow the United States president to order an attack on you. Okay, Do-hee, what is your statement, Do-hee? Pro 1, Do-hee.
Yes, I also agree about that topic because I want focus on the United States and the Taiwan situation at the time when I received that topic, and actually the United States like written down about the Taiwan as a country, not this meant as betrayal about the China with the United States. So I think that it will make a Cold War situation and they make it worse. So I choose the
okay
situation.
And Kim Eugene, you have the last word.
So I thought that the capacity of the United States foreign policies, it depends on the coherence and cohesion of the foreign policy institutions. But since the bureaucrats, they rarely work together toward a common vision. So I thought it would not be the bureaucracy about the new Cold War.
Okay, so let me read my con statement. I mean, my pro statement. Yeah, yes.
So we also still have to do attendance after.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let me do that. I forgot. Okay, American foreign policy, attendance. Okay, so add smart attendance, and your number is 813. 813 is your number. 813. And Let me go back and share the screen so you can see that 813. And let me read my statement. I was pro. The Cold War bureaucracy is already portraying the Chinese state as a source of radicalization among Muslims in China through its oppression of the Uyghurs. American policies suppressing pan-Arabism and pan-Islamism as nationalism are ignored by not seeing pan-Arabism and pan-Islamism, viewing jihadists as simply bloodthirsty terrorists. Even the Taliban in Afghanistan are becoming viewed as allies of the US against the Islamic State who represent pan-Islamism. So the Americans are already talking about the Chinese as being responsible for encouraging pan-Islamism through their suppression of the Uyghurs, the Uyghur Turkic Muslim minority in Xinjiang province. But that's, I think we're going to, but let me, one last thing to get you some participation credit. So let me have you vote on this topic on whether or not you think the US Cold War bureaucracy is going to push, the US foreign policy bureaucracy is going to push the United States into a new Cold War. So you have 15 seconds. Please vote.
Professor,
Yeah.
do we have classes next week?
You're going to meet individually with me on Zoom. So we're not going to have regular class, but you're each going to meet individually with me on Zoom. I'll send you the link a few minutes before class, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.